that we have this article from The Guardian, which asserts just that genes from different parents can lead to smarter children. Now, I facetiously call myself a mixed-race supremacist, but there is something known as hybrid vigor, which may not relate the same to humans as it does to animals, but the general idea is that a wider gene pool, a larger gene pool, leads to more robust and stronger offspring and progeny, whatever you want to call it. And we have this study from The Guardian that says, diverse parental genes. Essentially, there have been numerous articles that argued race mixing leads to stronger, smarter, taller children, which is interesting to me as to why that's the case. But there's a reason why I'm hammering this into you right now, how they say genes. Genes lead to smarter children. Okay, we've concluded that. Now let's read the story. The children of parents who are more distantly related tend to be taller and smarter than their peers, according to one of the largest studies to date into genetic diversity. The study suggests that height and intelligence may be increasing as a growing number of people are marrying from more distant parts of the world. It looked at the genetic background and health of more than 350,000 individuals from around 100 communities across 4 continents. Researchers found the more distantly related an individual's parents were, the taller they tended to be, the higher they scored on cognitive tests, and the better their levels of educational attainment. However, the study found no link between genetic diversity and high blood pressure or cholesterol level, which had been suggested previously. Nathan Richardson, head of molecular and cellular medicine at the Medical Research Council, which funded the study, said, "Most people would believe a diverse gene pool is a good thing, but the discovery that height is associated with diversity wouldn't have been foreseen." It is true, according to The Guardian, that your genes will play a role in your intelligence. And then we have this wonderful article from Vox, which says there's still no good reason to believe black-white IQ differences are due to genes. Now listen, I am not here to argue this Vox article is wrong, simply that these two articles contradict each other. I am not a scientist, and I am not here to make the assertion that this is even true. In fact, I was shocked to find that Vox was I didn't know this. Vox has numerous articles that straight up say, so does the New York Times, yes, they are saying that Vox believes white people are scoring higher on IQ tests than black people. And it says in this in the article, these writers say IQ exists, that it predicts many life outcomes, that there is a gap between black IQ scores and white IQ scores, that IQ is at least partly heritable, but they reject the conclusion that Murray and Harris say is virtually inescapable, that it follows that black-white difference in IQ must be partly genetic. Now, I actually think this is kind of fair, but I feel like they're dancing around the issue. It would be silly to make any conclusion in science, technically. There are going to be people on both ends of the spectrum that make conclusions, and people in the middle will typically just have ideas. I've always been someone who's felt that it's better to have ideas than to believe entirely. Actually, I think they talk about this in Dogma. Ideas are open-ended. You have an idea that you think may or may not be true, and you're willing to investigate that idea, but beliefs are hammered in. What I found interesting about this, as I did this research, is that it's interesting to me to see that Vox is going to argue there's no good reason. Well, I would imagine that there is a good reason to believe that there is going to be genetic differences in IQ when The Guardian put out a story 2 years before Vox arguing that mixed-race people have, or not necessarily mixed-race people, but the more genetically diverse, more distant their parents are, the smarter they become. So, let's see.
So, Tim Pool is making a standard Harrisite argument. Harrisite meaning people who've been told they're smart because they agree with the intellectual dark web. See, that's the scam of the IDW. For $5, they'll tell you what talking points and what frames to endorse and use so that you can be certified smart TM. They've trademarked a form of intellectual endorsement, and as long as you parrot them, you can tell everybody on your block you're a smart boy too. Now, apparently, Tim Pool has a chip on his shoulder over the fact that he dropped out of school in the 8th grade. He never went to high school. He never went to college, which I guess in it and of itself, or unto itself, is not something to degrade someone or disparage someone over. But it obviously has resulted in him not being able to comprehend the extent to which he's ignorant on a subject. And his inability to comprehend his own ignorance, his inability to comprehend his own ignorance has resulted in Tim Pool identifying as a centrist, a radical centrist, follower of the intellectual dark web, where no one can fathom their own ignorance. The whole catch is that it's Dunning-Kruger. The intellectual dark web is full of intellectuals who are in fact dumb. They don't understand. They don't have insight to offer you on any of the subjects they talk about. Jordan Peterson talks about how he stood up for 30 or 40 days straight because he drank a cup of apple cider on gender issues. Woefully wrong. Not just cynical. Wrong. They are dumb, stupid, ignorant, willfully ignorant. But again, intellectual.tm, trademarked, for profit, people who manage to, listen, having a PhD does not mean that you understand everything in the world ever. A PhD is a very specialized and specific credential. This is how you get certified doctors and PhDs in infomercials, because they'll get PhDs from the College of Singapore in PhDs in podiatry, and be on infomercials giving people advice, medical advice from a PhD, from a doctor, a medical doctor, about pills for weight loss. You know what I mean? A PhD is not a credential of universal expertise. The intellectual dark web, which Tim Pool is ostensibly part of or a champion for with their race realism shit, is a bunch of people who have degrees in other things like this, Gadsad or Godsad, or however the guy pronounces his name, has a fucking degree in the psychology of advertising. Okay, and he's out here talking about politics, global politics, being an expert in global politics. Jordan Peterson has some kind of a degree in psychology, but he's out here talking about ancient symbolism and feminism and culture theory that he has no credential and he has no experience in. When so coming back to Tim Pool, here is this person who doesn't understand, and again, this is Sargon's fault. I blame Sargon for this format of stupid guy reacts to article as he reads it for the first time. This is a very dumb format. Maybe someone who's studied on these subjects could get away with this, not somebody who has not done any kind of diligence in this field on this subject, reading the article for the first time and coming to conclusions sentence by sentence. I've noticed this about Sargon's format for This Week in Stupid and for the Thinkery. He comes to conclusions sentence by sentence. That's completely irresponsible. That's that's why I don't do reaction videos on this channel where I play the video, react, play the video, react. I vet the video completely. I contextualize it. I do basic diligence on the video, and then I cut it later. But my response is after I've already vetted the subject, vetted the person that made the content, vetted. That's just basic diligence. You'd make a reaction video to a movie trailer. That's different than reacting to an article, a political or historical or current events article, or to research. You don't click play, stop, play, stop, play, stop. And that's the equivalent of what's happening here. They put an article on the screen. They react. It's profoundly reactionary. You're gonna come to reactionary conclusions sheerly by the structure of the format. You didn't think, you didn't process, and you didn't research before you came to your conclusion. And that's what Tim Pool's doing here. Because as usual, he was immediately debunked. He was immediately debunked online when people responded to this video on Twitter. They were talking about that article that he cites does not use the word race. People can be, they're just talking about the further away you are from committing incest, the healthier your kids will be. It's not about race realism. Here's the deal with race realism. The left does not say that race does not exist. The left says that race exists, that race is not fixed, that race is not clearly defined. There is no empirical place where black ends and white begins, and vice versa, within any kind of genetic code. You will never have a black-white test for where race begins. And no scientific test can tell you precisely this person is the demarcation point of the white or black race. So it's just a gradient. It's a profound gradient. But he's accepting the alt-right frame that, and of course he would accept the alt-right frame because it's in the interest of his business, the Tim Pool industry, right? Because even though the alt-right doesn't, supposedly endorse Tim Pool on the intellectual dark web, they will accept the brain work that they do for them, per se, meaning that there's a symbiosis between alt-right and alt-right as regards framing and priming. So Tim Pool is not useful in the sense of he's not a direct advocate for their ideals, right? Their end beliefs, but he does transmit, and this is why they were so mad about Alex Jones being put off, even though he's not formally alt-right. Formally, this is one of the dum-dums that regurgitates their framing and primes right-wingers who are on the edge of traversing into full-blown alt-right. It makes sure that the alt-right has an entrance to come into that framed mindset and go, you're already ready for this. We're just going to start flipping pronouns around and shit to get you into the final phase. So, Tim Pool is irresponsibly uninformed. He is dangerously ignorant. He is banal, and he is so decay. He's so Dunning-Kruger about it. He just has no sense. And again, Dunning-Kruger has become the standard for pop politics on YouTube because their existing personalities, people like PewDiePie, people like H3H3, people like JonTron, people like Joe Rogan, and ostensibly Sargon have created this